In my experience, having this coach, especially the bigger deals, is the most important thing. No mystery there. These people exist. They're not unicorns, right? You can find them. They're very difficult to find. So maybe they're a little bit like unicorns, right? But you can find them. And for me, if I had to name top 3 reasons to win this deal, large deal, again it would be one, the value we brought, and that comes from the team we had. 2 was the coach that I had, and 3 was some of the other relationships that we had at the senior levels, right?
Welcome to the Business Developer Podcast with Sujay, a source of inspiration for business developers. By listening to this podcast, you may gain some ideas, inspirations, or food for thought towards your own journey of developing your business successfully, now or in the near future. Thanks for your positive feedback on the previous episode with Rupali Mehra, wherein we discussed the power of storytelling in developing a business. We all immerse ourselves in stories. Storytelling is the most effective way for us business developers to engage with our audience. In today's episode, we shall hear about the art of winning large deals. Winning large deals is the holy grail for many business-to-business companies. Let us learn about that from our guest Raghav Radhakrishnan, VP and Global Client Executive at NTT DATA Services. So please join me in welcoming our guest Raghav Radhakrishnan. Hello Raghav, welcome to the Business Developer Podcast. Thanks for taking out time to join this episode.
Hi Sujay, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great, Raghav. Just to give you a brief about this podcast, the objective of this podcast is to become a source of inspiration for the listeners, who by listening to the experiences shared by seasoned professionals like you could gain some ideas and food for thought towards their own journey of developing their business. So, Raghav, to get started, can you share with our listeners the story of your life?
The story of my life. In the context of this discussion, I think I have an interesting incident to kind of start with. This is one my mother has narrated multiple times. I was very young. I grew up in India, in Chennai, and I must have been 6 or 7 years old. And my father's friend had come. He had bought a new car, one of the newer ones in the market those days. And I apparently convinced him that it was in his best interest that he kind of lets me drive the car around for a bit.
Wow.
And so whatever it was, he took me for a drive, and I sat in the front holding the steering wheel, etc. And when he came back to the house, he told my parents that your son, he should be a salesman. He'd be a really great salesman. And I apparently said, yes, I want to be a salesman. I want to be a salesman, because I thought salesmen get to drive new cars every day.
It seems
Yeah.
you had it in your blood.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, I did my undergrad in Chennai, and then Sujay, of course, we went to business school together, which is where we first met.
Yeah.
Your listeners might be interested to know that our Sujay Datta graduated top of our class, and I suffice it to say that I kind of graduated.
I don't know how I did that, but you had your own moments,
Thank
Raghav. You did trouble some of our processes, right?
yeah. Well, post that, I worked in India for a few years. I was with Citibank for a while, Asian Paints, etc., and then moved to the US about 16 years ago. And since then, I've been working in technology for all that time, and pretty much all through that, I've been working with clients in the banking and financial services space, which I love. It's an amazing, exciting space. Even it's got its monolithic applications and a bunch of legacy technology, etc., still in, but it is still very fast moving, and the rate of change is also accelerating. Going from changing regulations to, let's say, open banking trends, etc. It's a good place to be in. They say that money makes the world go round. Well, this is the industry that does it, right? And I'd been a business development professional for a long time, a sales guy, if you will. But over the last few years, I've kind of moved to more of a general management type role where I run a portfolio of accounts. We have people across sales and obviously the delivery of those services as well, working on them. And I have many bosses, of course, at work, but I liken the role to be that of a kind of mini CEO, because you're really running your business, your book of business. You have P&L responsibility, you have the creativity to do what you will to kind of nurture and grow that business. So that's what I've been doing these last few years.
That's great, Raghav. I think that serves as a good foundation for our discussion going ahead. So, Raghav, for the interest of our listeners, can you help demystify the magic that you have created with your customers over the years of your experience?
Honestly, I don't know if there's much wizardry or magic in this. Certainly, it's not a science. It's both a science and an art kind of thing, right? The art of the deal, if you will. right? And I think it comes down to maybe a few key things that any good salesperson must possess. And I'll kind of preface this by saying that the salesperson or the business developer, he or she is just the tip of the spear. In most cases, there are there's certainly some selling situations or business setups, etc., where this is not true. But in most cases, that salesperson is not a lone ranger, right? He is again that tip of the spear, and he's got this small horde of warriors behind him or her, and with whom they must work really well. But maybe more on that later. Going back to the few key things that I think a salesperson must possess. First and foremost, people truly buy from people they like, right? People they like doing business with, they like hanging out with, etc. So may sound a little simple, but I think bottom line, a salesperson must be likable. Again, it sounds simple, but it's not easy to establish genuine relationships with people. And for that, you must be genuinely interested in them, not just as their role and title, but as who they are as people, or relate to them. The second thing is, I think a salesperson must be knowledgeable. As likable as you are, just because you are, the client may not be giving you that valuable time, right? If you know things about your client, you know their business, you know their domain, you have experience in having worked in it, or you have perspective on the problems they are facing, and you can bring value to even a simple conversation that you're having with them, that makes it a lot more likely that the person wants to listen to you, right? I think so these are some two basic qualities that an individual must have. But outside of this, there are many, many more, right? An ability to work well with teams, providing the right leadership through a pursuit process, and in that process having the foresight, not just being driven by your current year quotas and targets, etc., right? But having the foresight to take that long view, which will mean that you're wanting to get the best out of that engagement for not just your team, but really for your client, and you're able to translate that value. These are some of the things I can kind of think of, Sujay. I'll give you an example of when some of this came together well. We recently won a large size deal for workforce productivity, what some folks call dynamic workplace services, etc., the employee digital experience. But basically what it is your companies have increasingly realized that it's not just customers we serve, but really truly we start with our employees. We need to have employees who are happy, who are enabled, and therefore are as productive as we'd like them to be. And so, what can we do to deploy and enable right technology to the right people within a company through an employee's life cycle, starting from onboarding to their daily tasks to the time they leave the company? This involves things like service desk and field services, asset management, innovation streams, etc., etc. Right? Incidentally, this deal was we signed with one of the biggest banks in the U.S. and was the largest deal signed by my organization with a financial services customer, and also the largest managed services deal signed by the bank themselves. So I think it's an interesting example.
Right. So many congratulations for you and your company for that deal. So, in the interest of this business development exercise, Raghav, from your experience that you've gathered through this process of winning this large deal, for our listeners, can you help unpack or deconstruct that? How to go ahead and process such large deals and end up winning such large deals?
It's a great question, and I think I should preface this by saying I don't believe there is one answer, obviously, to this. It's not a science, right? I mean, there's a bit of an art here as well in the art of selling. And I also strongly believe that whether it's a small deal or a large deal, your involvement and your effort, etc., plus the just the complexity of navigating the deal, winning it, there's a lot of similarities, right, between large deals and small deals, whether you're selling a $10 million deal or in the hundreds of millions. Obviously the hundreds of millions will take a lot more due diligence and a lot more effort, concerted effort from more people, I guess, right? But so looking at all of that, I think obviously the primary starts with with the client expressing the desire, or you being able to see the client's needs in terms of what they need from a solution, right? What is the problem and what is the solution and how can I impact it? You want to be able to map your client's organization very well. What that means is who are the key stakeholders from both the technology perspective as well as business, understanding their buying behavior. Is this a long cycle? What kind of budget requests do they make internally? Do they need to build an internal business case, and can I help impact that in some way? How strong is their procurement organization? Will they be present through the deal? Will there be Chinese walls set up between the actual business stakeholders and the various vendor partners who are participating? What is the current incumbency, right? How are they delivering these services currently to their employees, or is it a brand new thing? And if there is an incumbent, what can you learn about how things are being delivered now to get a sense of what are the pain points that they're feeling, which is why they're expressing a need to change? In my case, with the large deal I mentioned, this was very much a factor, right? The incumbency and how we can impact things that you can see are plainly going wrong, etc. Right? I think that's an important thing to do. As you get through the process, and large deals like this, Sujay, these kind of deals die through the process quite a few times, and there are times when you'll have to resuscitate these deals, pick them back up and breathe life into them almost. And that'll happen when you're running a large, let's say, again, deals which are of this magnitude will certainly go through an RFP, RFI kind of process. I mean, companies can call it what they will, but a thorough vetting process. Through that process, you will experience many ups and downs. You need to be a good coach, and you need to be a good leader for your pursuit team, right? To keep them focused. By the way, coming to the pursuit team, you're going to have clear roles listed and manned in that pursuit team. You cannot have confusion on who's doing what and who communicates what, things like that, right? And so I was lucky in that we had a great team, and we had some stellar superstars on the team who kind of really took us along here. But a lot of this is more from an internal perspective. Now I look back to the client, and as you're working through it, let's say you've been through the RFI, you're shortlisted for the RFP, you need to start building the right relationships in your client organization, wherein you have a coach almost, right? Somebody in the client organization who may be a key influencer, may not be a decision maker, but who trusts you enough that you're able to have conversations, frank conversations with him or her on what's happening and what is the client really looking to see, and stuff like that. Through that, and through the insights gained, and through the value that your team is able to demonstrate, you slowly start building consensus within the client's buying organization. Again, this is a combination of finance and technology, and if you're impacting people, then HR, legal, certainly, right? And that engagement through the contracting process, where frequently, one side suffers or both sides end up unhappy after the deal is signed, is probably because of a lack of the right diligence, right? So I would stress on that too.
So help us understand the leadership aspect that you mentioned, right? You have to lead the pursuit team, and I believe there could be internal stakeholders beyond your pursuit team also, like your senior management, and then you talked about different functions. And many of these team members most likely are not reporting to you in the organization reporting hierarchy. How did you manage to drive and execute that leadership across this wide spectrum of people? And each of them might have different priorities in their own roles too, and there could be other deals also running in the organization. So if you can help our listeners take through that process of yours, which maybe the listeners could learn from.
That's a great question, right? And I think you touched on something so important. Is you're going to have people internally who may or may not be part of your organization. I mean, in fact, the majority of people would be leverage resources or people from other, verticals and lines of business who have their own priorities, etc. How do you corral, if you will, right, all of these people to the common goal through the process? I think that's a great question. After you win a deal, even when you're delivering the services, again, you don't really, those resources don't really belong to the account. They're again being pulled in from various parts of the organization. And how do you harness that energy to kind of impact your account in the best way possible? I think this is an ongoing struggle, right, for a lot of us. And this is something that we manage on a daily basis. I believe that if you can lay out at the very beginning your clear expectations from people and have them sign up to those expectations, right? You know that if you're going to come in and deliver this project, or if you're going to come in and help me, write this proposal, so much is expected of you, and are you able to take that on? With that, you're not just assigning responsibility, but you're creating some level of accountability with those resources. That's one. Two, you can make your needs more exciting to them to work on, quite frankly. Again, a large deal like this, one of the big incentives for a lot of the team was, to help out with the pursuit and then be able to kind of man some of those leadership roles on the account once you start working on it. I'll give you an example. This is a minor example, right? The service desk architect that we used on, we have multiple towers, right, working on this. You have things like asset management and service desk and field services and client engineering, etc., right? So we had our service desk architect, who was a very bright young man, and really helped us deliver through the project. And soon after that, he one received a promotion and a lot of internal recognition, but he also was elevated to the role of service desk leader on this new account, where now he has about 150 people working on his service desk, right? So rewards and incentives are always going to be an important factor in terms of how you get people to engage with you. Again, taking the large deal example, if it's a hundreds of $1 million kind of deal, you're obviously, your management are going to be very interested in the deal. Another important thing for you to do is to navigate that internally and get the right executives to also engage at the right levels with the client. The client one sees the attention, and our executives can actually contribute to us winning the deal, and we did that as well, I think pretty well on this example.
Right. I believe emotional intelligence and how you connect to people emotionally is the key thing, right? To get your needs and your deal get prioritized within their own list of actions that they need to do. And they are wholly committed with you on the deal as you are from the sales leader leading the deal, right?
Absolutely. I think you'll agree with me, Sujay, if I tell you that the more and more we spend times in our career, etc., and you see people do very well, and you can always say that emotional intelligence is critical for you as you kind of progress in your career.
Yes, exactly. And if you remember, one of the things that we used to learn when we used to study, one of our professors used to tell that organization behavior. Learn this course much better. This is one you might not find interesting right now, but organization behavior is one that is going to help you in your careers to grow in your careers, right, Raghav?
Absolutely, yes. And that's very true, right? And I guess that's where maybe it's the science versus the art kind of thing. Behavior is always very personal, very subjective, right? And it is definitely an art.
Right. Let's move to the client side of things because customer focus and customer managing the customer is critical part of it in addition to the internal part. Now you talked about a coach and that's always mystical thing for me. Everybody says you should have a coach. Do you think is there's mystery behind it? How do you really identify a coach or maybe the client procurement team etc they are playing games, okay, you become a coach for this company, you try to manage it. Do you think clients also play that game with their vendors? How do you go in that client mapping and identifying the coach in this deal? Could you really identify a coach where you were comfortable with, and what was that process you adopted to select that this person could be a potential coach with that wide stakeholder base that you see at the customer end?
In my experience, having this coach, especially the bigger deals, is the most important thing. No mystery there. These people exist. They're not unicorns, right? You can find them. They're very difficult to find. So maybe they're a little bit like unicorns, right? But you can find them. And for me, if I had to name, top three reasons to win this deal, the large deal, again, it would be one, the value we brought, and that comes from the team we had. Two was the coach that I had, and three was some of the other relationships that we had at senior levels, right? Again, I think you made a very interesting point. Do you think companies are playing that game? Do they have coaches assigned to various vendors? I'm sure they are, right? I'm sure they are. In fact, large buying organizations frequently assign senior executives to each of their strategic vendors who kind of help those vendors navigate the internal environment, who kind of help those vendors broaden their footprint, etc., and take it on as a very personal, I'm the executive sponsor for this relationship type thing, right? That's not your coach, by the way. I don't think that person is your coach. That person is will do what you said, which is have multiple people for multiple vendors. A coach is somebody who maybe either believes that you have the right solution for them and wants to back you, or two, has a good relationship with you and you have the credibility that she or he believes you will be the right choice for them.
Right. Raghav, in your experience of this large deal that you've gone through, I would like to just check whether your experience validates a very well studied understanding of decision making, where it is said that most decisions are made emotionally and then justified rationally. So, do you subscribe to that thinking, or what's your viewpoint and perspective of that given the experience that you went through in your large deal?
I absolutely think that is true. I think decisions are made emotionally primarily, and then you kind of do a lot of rational diligence post that to ensure that you're actually made the right decision or not. If you think about it, really all selling is relationship based. You buy anything primarily because of one, you need it, but also because you like the person you're buying it from, or you like the company that person represents, etc. Right? A lot of decision making happens because you know the people whom you're working with and who are looking to buy something more than just as their roles and their titles, right? You actually know them as people. You've kind of hung out with them and you appreciate their perspectives, they appreciate your perspective, etc. You've built some credibility with them over a period of time. All of these play a huge role in terms of them actually making a decision. They also want to be working finally with people they like, right? Let's say you win this large deal, in the end you're going to be delivering services. They would like to work with people they can trust and they like and have some experience with and stuff like that. So I would agree with that, and that again goes back to the engagement with the coach and the key influencers, decision makers. You can go through the RFI and the RFP process, and all of that needs to check out, right? You need to do well with all of that. You need to also with how your contracting team works with their legal team. All of these are very important factors which will help them rationalize that decision. But if you're already there and you're doing these things, there's a good chance that they've already made that decision to work with you. So I would agree with that. But if I may, I'll tell you another thing which is very exciting to clients, right? Is you take a bunch of sometimes commoditized services, providing workforce enablement. It isn't really rocket science, right? It's having that service desk, it's having a field services team, etc., to handle dispatch and things like that. Very very process oriented commodity in many cases. So what can you do to create excitement around what you're taking to them? So we call this our dynamic workplace solutions, right, which enable clients to transform their end user environment into a new model of support, again to deliver that superior customer experience or employee experience. So in this case, for example, we are helping them build automated solutions such as a concierge led service desk experience, that integrates some state of the art tooling to help them automate processes to the extent possible. It includes things like a shift left philosophy with things like sentiment monitoring, virtual assistants to help field BAU queries with greater efficiency, leveraging bots in conjunction with human teams to take on repetitive tasks so that their employees can focus on more strategic, fulfilling work. All of these things were very exciting to them in terms of the innovation that we're able to drive to, and I think that's also an important component in how you win large and big and new deals.
Yeah, that's true. And now let's take it forward. You won the deal. Now you're delivering value to the customer. One metric I want to check with you, which is favorite of mine, is something which I call a promise to deliver ratio in a relationship and an engagement where you make a lot of promises to your customers. Yes, we will do this. You'll get in by that time, and then how much you deliver. Do you think that plays a role in your experience of having a very high, maybe close to 100% may not be possible, but a very high promise to deliver ratio with your customers across the engagement?
I think that is the most important thing you can do, right? In the end, I mean, if you're a fly by night operator and you want to win something and run, and leave, then that's fine. But if you have a long term view, if you want to build that partnership with the client, then that promise to deliver ratio you put, I think it's crucial. And I have multiple examples where it hasn't gone well, quite honestly, right? I mean, we've signed smaller deals where maybe there wasn't the right due diligence, etc., but you end up on day one showing up for work, and what the contract says you'll deliver versus what they expect you to deliver are two entirely different things. And so there you're starting to fail what they considered your promise to deliver already, right? And so I think it's very essential for you to retain credibility and try and exceed expectations if possible. It's not going to be possible always, and like I said, that ratio, maybe you're under perfect over there, you're under 100, etc., but it's very important to keep focus on that. And again, to tie this back to my innovation point also, right, is your promise to deliver, you can amplify that delivery when you're also constantly charting an innovation roadmap for them. You're constantly taking them to new areas, and you're leading them rather than kind of just filling the brief and following orders, if you will.
That's how you deliver high on expectations, because when client may not be expecting that, but when you innovate, you take it to the next level and you get a wow effect on the customer says, wow, I didn't expect this, right?
People are moving from things like SLAs, which are service level agreements. They're moving towards experience level agreements, XLAs, right? Where you're not just tracking if, let's say, the call to the call center happened in the right amount of time, was the average speed to answer good, average handle time good. That's not what we're tracking. We want to get to a point where we are able to track that employees or that customers end satisfaction with the overall experience. That's an important thing as well to keep an eye on.
I would say that's the nirvana stage, right? Where you're able to deliver experience and actually measure that and make it happen. Now, Raghav, let's go to the practicality. You spoke of COVID impact in the initial part of the discussion. And as we were discussing through, we came to that view that it's very much emotional, it's very much personal, people to people. Now, how are you managing with this COVID and with all the remote working, social distancing? How are you managing your business development steps right now in this kind of a reality?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? It's a reality that the entire world is grappling with. So that's one thing, right? Is you're not just alone in this. It's all of us, and together as humanity, we'll need to tackle the situation and move forward. And I wanna certainly pay attention while we're discussing all of these things. That there are a lot of people who are suffering some very negative consequences of COVID, and so our thoughts should be with people like that and how much we can help them. But I'll tell you, to specifically what you asked is something I grapple with. Like I said, I've been talking a lot about relationship based selling and understanding clients and understanding them as people, etc. Quite frankly, COVID has impacted that greatly, right? I mean, it's not easy to do a virtual kind of meeting and really have that kind of connection with your clients. You got to understand a lot of client environments have changed dramatically. There are many companies that have experienced revenue loss of up to 50 and greater percent, and so you may not have that kind of business development opportunities as well. But if you're in the right sectors or if you're in the right client space, there is still a lot of investment happening. There's a lot of thrust towards digitization, which is all technology enabled. So this is also potentially an opportunity. But this whole not being there in person is definitely an impact that COVID imposed social distancing has kind of caused. You'll need to be creative about things like that, and so I try and organize team building sessions with various people in the client organizations at various levels. I have tried to do some kind of virtual happy hours where you send the same box of assortments to various clients and you meet them virtually and then talk about their business and how we can help and things like that, right? But none of this is perfect, and it's a work in progress. We're trying to manage around all this. How about you, Sujay? What are you doing that's different these days?
It's certainly difficult. What I am trying to do to increase the number of touch points, since we are not able to meet personally. Whenever we are meeting remotely, I try to switch on my video, try to exchange more messages, make more calls, maybe as people are working from homes, we get a little bit of more flexibility to be in there. I try to maybe get like understanding how they're doing with their family and the health, to show that empathy with the customers and feeling that we are in together. I think those small things goes a long way. Maybe this is a opportunity to make a difference, I will say, for the business developers to stand out. If we can become more personal, show more empathy to the customers and become closer.
Great points. On an aside from that, right? If I You mentioned something there which I just want to hit on for a second. Flexibility. Given we're all working from home, we have some flexibility with which to work. I think that's essential again when you're running a large team. One of the positive impacts that I've seen from COVID is things like we can now implement a split shift. Right? People are working from home, and so if I'd like, I can potentially work from 10 to 2 and then take a 4 hour break. Handle things I'd like to with my family, etc., and then come back on and do 6 to 10 and do my 8 hours that way, right? The level of flexibility you get will also help you if you can translate that and kind of build some synergies around how you deliver those services. It will also help you make a good impact to your client.
Yes, I think to add to that, Raghav, as we speak, there could be another positive. It's more from a delivery perspective, because earlier client may ask your resource to be there in person, which puts constraint upon what resources could be in person with that customer at that particular point of time. But now it is virtual. You as an organizer, a global organization, have an access to the global resource pool. So I believe then you can identify that best resource for the customer and bring that person in front of the customer. So that's another thing I try to do, because now even I'm sitting in Europe, in Sweden and Stockholm, I can get a resource from US to speak to the customer.
Absolutely.
Anyways, it has to be virtual. So I believe that's another way where we can impact and create positive difference with our customers by leveraging the right resources, because now the access is there, right?
Yep, absolutely. In fact, when we kind of helped lead our client this way. This is a bank, and they're fairly conservative. They've got very stringent risk measures, etc. Things like work from home were entirely new to them, while we as technology organizations have a lot more familiarity with this. And so we helped coach their risk teams, their risk management teams, etc., through this process, thereby and also showing them exactly what their security requirements are, what concerns there are, and how we mitigate those with our processes, helping them make these decisions, right? Okay, yes, we can enable this team to work from home, to work on these queues, etc., etc. So I think again it's important to stay on top of your clients needs, looking at it from their perspective and then helping them see the light, if you will, right? That again will show some thought leadership to the client.
Yeah. And that's the value add you are providing, right, to the customer, delivering something beyond the expectations, beyond the contract. So, Raghav, very nice, interesting discussions. Now, I'd like to move to one of my favorite questions, which I ask many of our guests. So, the context is this, Raghav. Throughout our career, I think we are close to 2 decades in our work career. And there are many things in the past which has made us successful, right? And we try to cling on to that, and maybe the present needs something else to unlearn the past behaviors which led to past successes, but in the present we need to unlearn those and learn new behavior or new practices, whatever you may call it as. Have you gone through such kind of experiences where you had to do that unlearning and relearning?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think life in itself is a constant process of unlearning and learning, right? You gotta be willing to unlearn as well and not hold on to things when clearly that they don't work or they're not correct, right? Stuff like that. So I would say early on in my career, again, and this is also a function of what kind of industry you're involved in. Earlier it was more channel sales and things like that for me with Asian Paints, and then I moved to more relationship based B2B kind of selling, right, with Citibank and then technology. So I was a lot more aggressive early on in my career. I believed persuasion is primarily the art of selling, right? And clearly that was a behavior which did give me a lot of success initially, right? Especially with Asian Paints and all of that, that I've certainly had to unlearn. You got to, as you mature in your career, you agree with the fact that many times less is more, and the more can only come from and the more should come from what value are you taking to your client. Focus internally on what can I do as an organization for to help my client, and then you try and amplify that value that you can deliver. If you do that, then your client is all the more interested in talking to you, and he's all the more interested in learning more about what you're talking about and giving you that time, right? So rather than try to persuade um, you know individuals, try and focus on the value you can bring. I think that's a big learning for me.
Well said, Raghav. That was a very engrossing discussion with you. So, Raghav, if some of our listeners would like to carry forward some points that we discussed today, how could our listeners reach out to you?
Oh, I'd love to hear from folks. I'm on LinkedIn, Raghav Radhakrishnan, and Sajay. Maybe I request you to put the link to that in your episode notes, if possible. I really appreciated and enjoyed the conversation too. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Raghav, for today. I wish you all the best, Raghav, in your future endeavors. And we'll be in touch, and maybe we look forward to see you here again on the Business Developer podcast sometime in the near future.
Thank you so much, Sajay.
Take care, Raghav. B2B business developers need large deals to scale their business. Winning large deals is an art which can be learned. Hope this episode has helped you to gain ideas, inspirations, or food for thought towards winning large deals to scale your business, now or in the near future. Thanks to those who have given positive ratings to this show. Do give me a high five if you liked this episode. I would also love to hear your feedback and suggestions for improvement. Also, if you'd like to get your question answered, just record it and email it to me. I would make sure to play your question and get that answered in one of my upcoming episodes. Or if you'd like to share your story through the Business Developer podcast, pitch it to me. My contact information is provided in the episode notes. That's it for now. See you again in the next episode of the Business Developer podcast. Stay happy, healthy, curious to learn, and go ahead and close your large deal. Bye for now.